Welcome to the Fixing Your City podcast. Here's George Crandall.
Effective public involvement. Over the years, I've prepared transformation strategies for my clients. I have found that most effective and cost-effective way to engage the public is through the use of informational workshops. There are two kinds of information workshops, the short and the long workshop. Both can be used to inform the public about the planning process and to receive their comments and suggestions. Short information workshop. This workshop lasts 1 hour. It works well with small special interest groups and elected officials. The workshop starts with a round of introductions and a 10 to 15-minute PowerPoint presentation summarizing project objectives and the planning process. Response sheets are handed out to everyone attending the workshop, and the remaining time is used to answer questions, receive comments, and fill out the response sheets. The last 10 minutes of the meeting are often the most revealing and valuable to the planning team. I ask each attendee to provide a final observation or comment, though they can pass if they wish. If we're seated around a table, I start the process by pointing to the individual next to me, then the next individual, and so on, until I have acknowledged everyone around the table. This simple process gives these individuals who are reluctant to speak a space to be heard. What I have found is that those who have been silent throughout the meeting are often provide the most valuable comments and insight. The long information workshop. This workshop lasts 2 to 3 hours depending on the size and audience, which may range from 50 to 500 people. Tables accommodating up to 10 people are used to display maps, drawings, and meeting materials. It is important to have a large projection screen and a high-resolution projector so that everyone in a room can see the screen. A useful schedule for a long workshop begins with a half-hour PowerPoint presentation that educates the public about the issues and possible solutions. Afterwards, 50 minutes should be reserved for questions from the audience. So that all members of the audience are able to hear the questions, a wireless microphone should be available for each questioner. After the questions, the next 30 minutes can be used for discussion of presentation materials, filling out one-page response sheets, and designating someone at each table to give a short verbal report to the assembled audience summarizing what was discussed at the table. The time required to complete this last step, the table reports, depends on the number of people in attendance. Workshop timing. Ideally, information workshops are held during each of the 3 major phases of the framework plan. 1. At the onset of the start phase, the public's issues and concerns are identified in its workshop and will become the reference points for creating urban design alternatives. 2. During the design phase, once the urban design alternatives have been developed, they are presented to the public for their evaluation and preference in 1 or 2 workshops. And 3, during the implementation phase, additional workshops can take place when various implementation strategies are under consideration. In every workshop, it is important to remind the public about the issues that they identified at the beginning of the planning process and how the evolving plan and alternatives respond to those issues. The practice of holding public information workshops is uncomplicated and efficient. Concerned people can usually find the time to attend at least a few workshops. If a problem is complex and the public does not understand the implications of any given proposal, the natural reaction would be skepticism and opposition. The challenge is to take adequate time to prepare easy-to-understand materials that are clearly linked to the interests and concerns initially identified by the public. It is vitally important that at all information meetings, attendees are invited to fill out a one-page response sheet or ballot at the conclusion of each session so that they have the opportunity to indicate their preferences for the various alternatives under consideration. Ballots. I have found that what is voiced during a public meeting is seldom representative of what the larger public audience is thinking. The verbal exchanges that take place in public meetings are nearly always misleading and give little indication of the public's true feelings. More often than not, those opposed to a project are quick to let everyone know why they are opposed, while those in favor remain generally silent. A ballot is the best way to measure public opinion accurately, and voting is the only trustworthy means to determine where the public stands with regard to specific schemes for achieving established goals. In order for the vote to be successful and provide an accurate record of public sentiment, the following components must be in place: clear, accurate educational materials, high-quality graphics illustrating alternative scenarios, a simple ballot offering voters the opportunity to respond with a yes, no, or other. Ballots may make many planners uncomfortable because the results may turn out to be contrary to the planner's agenda and derail a preferred course of action. The safer approach from a planner's perspective would be to ask open-ended, generalized questions, thereby leaving plenty of room for interpreting the results more freely and concluding that the public agrees with the planner's conclusions. Personally, I have never seen a city plan succeed without the broad, informed support of its community. Unless the public understands the proposals that are set forth in the plan and has a hand in weighing the merits of alternative proposal, even the best city plan will inevitably go awry. The ballot box provides the best method for building community support. The case for the ballot. In my career as an urban design consultant, I found that the ballot is the single best tool for incorporating the public's preference into an effective transformation strategy. My experience working with the city of Missoula, Montana clearly demonstrates the power of the ballot. As part of our effort to revitalize downtown Missoula, we had proposed constructing a system of protected bikeways using the mobility-oriented district planning model. The majority of residents were in favor of the concept. Local bike groups, on the other hand, didn't want protected bikeways because they preferred the full freedom of the roadways. The biking enthusiasts would brook no interference with their right to roam, even if it meant saving lives and promoting more biking. A representative from these biking groups sat on both the steering committee and the technical advisory committee for the planning effort, and would have killed our proposals if we had not been able to produce hard evidence that the majority of Missoulans were in favor of the idea. Fortunately, we had given citizens a vote, and the ballots showed 95% of the public favored protected bikeways. 2 years later, I'm pleased to say, Missoula inaugurated its first phase of the downtown transformation effort by building protected bikeways along its historic downtown shopping street. The ballot can be used to determine the public's position on a whole array of issues that impact transformation efforts. For example, a public plaza may be under consideration on a particular site and local residents are given the vote. If a solid majority is in favor of the proposed solution, we can move forward with the schematic with confidence. If it is split vote, or very nearly split, we know that the concept needs to be discarded or altered. And if there is less than a 50% positive vote, drop the project altogether. There are other benefits to having a ballot. When a consensus is lacking on how to deal with an urban design issue, there is always the potential that a local vocal minority may become disruptive in their position if their position is not embraced. But with the ballot results in hand, it is harder to contest the preference of a solid majority. Minority dissenters will quickly recognize and concede the issue. The public should be skeptical of any public involvement exercise that does not involve a ballot. Without a vote, planners can manipulate their urban transformation process to fit their own preferences or preconceptions. Ballots ensure that the public's wishes are valued and respected. Typical ballot. The tally from a typical meeting illustrates how the ballot identifies proposals for which there is substantial support and those that may need more work. For the sake of simplicity, it is recommended that the ballot questions be limited to the most important issues facing the city, and that responses are limited to that simple yes, no, or other, along with other opportunities to elaborate on any concerns that may require more commentary. Representative opinion sampling. People often wonder about the number of responses it takes to obtain a representative sampling. I have found again and again in my work that people who take the time to attend public involvement workshops usually provide a reliable snapshot of how the larger community feels. Below are two examples. In Milwaukee, Oregon, we prepared a transformation strategy incorporating our standard process for public involvement workshops and the use of ballots. But Milwaukee City administrators felt that our sampling was too limited. They asked us to mail the information we had presented in public meetings to every household in the city with an accompanying mail-in ballot. Approximately 7,000 households received our materials and over 15% of them returned the ballots, a rate of return considered high by professional pollsters who generally expect no more than a 3% return. Indeed, in the end, the results from the mail-in vote were identical to those received at the public meetings. In Santa Fe, we found results obtained from the public, from special interest groups, and from stakeholders in a limited number of downtown public workshops were exactly the same as those from suburban community. Statisticians may argue that the small percentage of the population who gets involved in a transformation process is not a statistically significant indicator of the public's preference. However, that may be. It can also be said that the public process has been well informed of meetings and agendas through the extensive advertising campaign. All residents are given the opportunity to attend, but it is the most concerned and opinionated members of the public who will make the effort to participate. The turnout for a large public meeting will vary depending on the size of the community and the local interest in transformation. In Lincoln, Nebraska, for example, meetings were held in the convention center with an attendance by well over 300 people. In Fairbanks, Alaska, meetings were held in hotel ballrooms and in the hockey arena with attendance in the hundreds. In Missoula, Montana, meetings were held in a hotel ballroom and attracted 250 people. Public outreach budget. The amount of money allocated to a public outreach effort should be limited to no more than 15 to 20% of the total budget for a transformation strategy. Public involvement is most effective when the public is educated about what works and what does not, provided with specific physical design alternatives illustrating different ways to respond to project goals, provided with an evaluation of how well the individual alternatives respond to project goals, invited to identify their preferences by ballot. A small sampling of public opinion can be a very accurate indicator of overall public sentiment. It is the quality, not the quantity, of the public involvement program that makes the difference. Ongoing involvement. The momentum needed to implement a transformation strategy should be well underway within the first few years of a plan's completion. Because government staff and other agency employees rarely have the political clout or connections to generate that kind of momentum, an implementation committee should be assembled to oversee and guarantee implementation. Membership of the implementation committee should include, ideally, a mix of elected officials and local business and civic leaders. Without an implementation committee or some form of ongoing public advocacy group, plans wither and end up on the shelf. Over time, the composition of a city council will surely change. Members will come and go depending on elections or job turnover. Public employees will also come and go. Those who were involved in developing a transformation strategy may be assigned or change jobs. Only an implementation committee will be able to provide the continuity so essential for putting the strategy into action and overseeing implementation. It is best if members of an implementation committee serve for at least 5 years. The following stories from cities where I've worked underscore how important it is to have implementation committee of different sizes. In Knoxville, Tennessee, a talented and energetic group of people calling themselves 9 Counties, One Vision initiated the city's transformation effort. As its name implies, the group represented a constituency larger than the downtown. Once the final transformation plan had been completed and this well-connected group of citizens disbanded, there was no longer a powerful group of people available to provide ongoing advocacy for implementation of the plan. Consequently, Knoxville's transformation efforts were severely compromised. In Santa Fe, New Mexico, the implementation committee was comprised of only 6 members, most of whom were political appointees whose interests lay more with the city council than with the concerns of the public. Ultimately, this small group had little staying power and lacked the mandate to focus on implementation. In short, there was no effective advocacy for implementing a recommendation of Santa Fe's plan, and the city suffered accordingly. The story was slightly different in Racine, Wisconsin. The client for the transformation strategy was a public agency committee. The committee was comprised of representatives from several downtown interest groups, and it stayed involved throughout the duration of the planning process. From start to finish, the committee provided oversight and continuity. After 5 years, the majority of the strategy recommendations had been implemented. Indeed, the strategy was such a success that a second downtown plan was commissioned, this time for a much larger area of the city, and was the same committee serving as the client. Whitefish, Montana, with a population of 7,500 people, had 3 mayors, 2 city managers, 2 planning directors, and a big turnover of seats on city council over a period of 8 years. The constant was an existing organization called Heart of Whitefish, a group representing downtown business interests. The organization provided the institutional memory needed to implement the downtown master plan that was completed in 2005. This highly effective group of citizens monitored all the implementation activities, and when a proposal turned out to degrade rather than improve the downtown, they were quick to inform elected officials and make suggestions on how to correct the situation. Most of the recommendations of the 2005 plan, as well as those from an updated 2013 plan, were implemented. When I became involved with Missoula, Montana in 2009, this city of 67,000 was well ahead of the game. They had several organizations already in place that were capable of managing the downtown's transformation strategy. A Downtown Business Improvements District, BID, the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, MRA, and the Missoula Downtown Association, MDA. These groups banded together with other organizations to form the Downtown Master Plan Implementation Team. Other members of the team include the city's Transportation Plan Manager, the Plan Services Manager, the Housing Authority, the Parking Commission, the Transit Agency, a City Council member, and a downtown businessman. In a 2013 report to the Missoula City Council, the implementation team summarized its purpose as follows: to meet monthly, to keep the transformation strategy alive and breathing, to tackle topics and components of the transformation strategy, set goals, and seek community members to serve on committees in order to engage with, advocate for, and achieve goals, to oversee the plan through completion, to recognize that citywide support is essential in order to implement the plan, to acknowledge that the accomplishments of the transformation strategy are the result of a community-wide effort. In the group's annual report to City Council, it provided an update from the previous year, a list of all accomplishments of the transformation strategy since its inception, a summary of immediate goals for the near future. Missoula's success in implementing its transformation strategy was due to the commitment and ongoing efforts of its solid, highly inclusive advocacy group. Missoula's implementation team provides an ideal, universal model for committees everywhere that are interested in turning a transformation strategy into action and keeping it off the shelf. The rule of thumb for successful implementation is that when an advocacy group or implementation committee is involved from the beginning of a transformation effort and remains engaged for 3 to 5 years after the transformation strategy is completed, the strategy has a very high rate of success.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe to get updates for future chapters.